there will be no real non-controlled currency in the world.
We're coming for you, banks.
Bitcoin is punk rock. Deal with it.
You split, we bankrupt you.
Do you use Lightning wallets to pay for things or not?
No.
Bitcoin Cash would be seen as more of a threat to the United States hegemony than Bitcoin.
Miles Town, what's your favorite kind of money?
Bitcoin Cash.
Hello and welcome back to the Bitcoin Cash podcast. Following Bitcoin Cash on its rise to global reserve currency number one, as always, still on that eternal quest. This is episode number 61, Centralized Chains versus Decentralized Development, featuring Kilian. I didn't actually ask if that's the correct pronunciation, but I'm pretty sure that's right. Monday, the 10th of October, 2022. I am your host, Jeremy. Jet is producing the show as always, and our guest today is a Bitcoin Cash app developer, and I assume also a regular professional developer, but I don't know. You can let me know, and a long time listener of the show too, I believe. Welcome to the show. How'd you get into Bitcoin?
Hi. Well, I understood okay, where do we start? How do I get into Bitcoin? I'll start there because I did develop the app, but it's not my full-time job anyway.
Okay, there you go. Yeah.
I got into Bitcoin, I think 2017, I think it was somewhere halfway 2017, but I heard of it somewhere in 2013. Someone told me about it and was like, oh yeah, it's cool stuff. Check it out. Back then I thought it was like some other kind of PayPal or Stripe or something like that. And it was only in 2017 that someone told me like, oh, whoa, Bitcoin's risen in price. I was like, what? It rose in price? I thought it was pegged to the dollar or something like that. So I was like, let's see what's all this about. Then very, very quickly I saw that there was so much stuff on Twitter and Reddit and all that kind of stuff. I thought, you know what, let's just check out the technical basics and let's see if I can find some books on it. So I read the Mastering Bitcoin by Andreas Antonopoulos. Yeah.
Antonopoulos, yeah.
Yeah. So stuff like that. I tried to find books on the subject because there was so much blah blah on Reddit and everything, and very quickly I came to the conclusion like, hey, wait, how come? Because the fork had already happened by then. I was like, but wait, why is BTC so much larger than BCH? And I just had a hard time wrapping my head around it after like going through the technical side of everything. So then only later on I started hearing about or reading up about possible manipulations and stuff like that. So, but
yeah, I mean, that's super interesting. Actually, we've had a good amount of guests on this show, I would say, who there seems to be a bit of a sweet spot of people who came in, particularly in 2017, either right before the fork as all the debate was kind of at the climax of everyone's like fervor over it, or immediately afterwards, in which there was sort of a bit of a riveting in the community, and it would have been it's hard for me to imagine actually getting involved at that time, because there would have been, I mean, there's always a lot going on in crypto, but particularly at that time it would have been so hard to try and get to the bottom of what is actually going on. Shout out to Dwell's Art, welcome to the chat for the first time. And so at that time, it would have been so chaotic and trying to make sense of all what is going on, with people being censored, and then there's conflicting stories on each side. But from what it seems to me, people who did join at that side seem to have fallen very heavily onto one side or the other. I've observed that the people we interview obviously are on average more like Bitcoin Cash, but I've also heard interviews and stuff with other people on the BTC side who said, I got in at 2017 and I knew that Bitcoin Cash was a scam, and like I don't hear a lot of people say I got in at 2017 and I thought, maybe I'll get a bit of this and a bit of that. Haven't heard that much of that actually. So super interesting that you say that. And what was your it's interesting you went straight to the technical docs as well too. Not many people do that either. You thought, look, if I go to where the high signal is, it'll be in the technical documentation rather than on Reddit or whatever.
Well, it started off more like a question like, wait, how on earth can you create something that has a fixed supply? And like I was very skeptical in the beginning of the things I read, like, no, but that's not possible, you know. And then I read some of it, and then eventually, like, you find the white paper somewhere. It's like, okay, let's try it out. Let's check this, and then, oh, wait a minute. Oh, wait, whoa, okay, now I need to find out all the details about this stuff. And then there's also another book like I took them along with me. I just took them out of the cupboard, like this one, for example.
Okay. I didn't know that book. What is that? Satoshi. It looks like a cake on the front cover or something.
Exactly. Well, I think it's some like cave painting or something. Book of Satoshi, and it's like all the original blog posts and stuff like that bundled of the conversations with Satoshi. So it's kind of like all of his all of
his quotes and everything.
Yeah, everything like that, kind of all bundled in one book. So I thought that was also cool and to read through and like see like what was the thought in the early conversations and stuff like that. Because I mean, imagine all the way in the beginning, if you come up with this idea and people you share around, I mean, even now still people sometimes think it's like, oh, what are you talking about? It's all scam, blah, blah, blah. Like even now I still have that feeling. So I can't imagine what it would be in the beginning. So.
Well, that's the really interesting thing. And it's been interesting talking to so many guests too, who come in at different times, all the different pathways people find their way into it, because it's very indicative of just the way knowledge is in general, I think, which is that it's like it already all exists. Well, not all of it, because people find new stuff, right? But a lot of stuff exists, and depending on where you're born and at what time and at what age or what time in your life you come to a certain subject, you are starting at zero, and somebody else is already way down the road on the 500th level of something, and so you've sort of got to slowly chip away at it and get into it, and everybody has a different approach to that, right? So for me, it's hard to relate to a lot of this stuff. Like a lot of these books and whatever, I haven't read that. I should probably read Mastering Bitcoin. I've read the first couple of chapters of that, but other ones like the Block Wars or the Bitcoin Standard, or things that people get into and they read it, and that's kind of how they come to understand Bitcoin. Is when I joined, that none of that stuff existed, so I just read the white paper and the forums. That's all there was. So I just got into it that way, and by the time those books and stuff came out, I don't need to. I already know, mostly what they're gonna say. I mean, I guess maybe I could always learn something from them. I'm not saying there's nothing in there, but I don't have a strong sort of need. But so, from that perspective, everybody comes in at a different point of the hype cycle as well too, I think, and that also plays into how they experience it as a huge like adrenaline rush, or like if you get in at the top and then it just crashes and everything dies and you think, oh, have I made a huge mistake? Right? Like that can also play into it too, I think. So it's certainly a different emotional flavor for everybody who learns about it. And so then so you said you're not a developer, but are you in some kind of technical occupation then? It's very interesting that you went straight to that tech stuff, being as late as you were, relatively speaking, and without being a developer.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm an engineer by trade. Yep. So actually, the funny story was I was still in college in 2017, and I think it was like a few months before exam period, and I discovered Bitcoin. I was like, oh man, I gotta know all about this. So I pretty much locked myself up for 2 weeks and just kept on finding out, okay, how does this work? And I failed all my subjects that semester. I just failed everything because I was so involved with trying to figure out what's this Bitcoin thing. Like, whoa, this is huge. This is like, whoa, how could I not have, like, I remember before thinking like, what's going to be the next big invention like the internet? Like I remember thinking if I lived in 2000 somewhere, I'd be totally all over the internet trying to start something or do something with it. And I was like, oh, too bad there's nothing new like that until I found Bitcoin. I was like, whoa, this is it,
Yeah, it truly is one of the, I mean, everything is like that. Again, where it just goes back to knowledge. Anything, if you drill into it enough, you can find all the kind of layers of it. But it is certainly a very deceptive thing about Bitcoin, and very ironic that it has such an reputation for being just scammy, or it's just people speculating to get rich or whatever, but it's kind of about finance. But then once you look at it, okay, it's also about computer science, and it's also about politics, and it's also about the interplay of those things in a very unique way. It's about sort of human rights at a certain level, and then it, you know, becomes around governance and about society, and all these things kind of layer on top of each other the more you drill into it. And yeah, obviously I'm perpetually fascinated by it, but it's great that there are other people. What you described about getting into it for a whole couple of weeks and being obsessed with it, that was also very typical of people who were earlier. Often, like if you hear about like Roger Ver or like Andreas Antonopoulos or Mike Kern or any of those, a lot of people you hear them talk about, they kind of got sucked down the rabbit hole. So yeah, you actually have a lot of the hallmarks of people who got into Bitcoin several years earlier than you did. That's very interesting. I don't think we've had anyone on this show who has that combo of being in the 2017 or later, but having the sort of OG traits. And then you found this show early. Then it sounds like you've been listening for a long time.
Yeah, I think pretty much in the beginning. I think maybe like the first 2 episodes I missed or something, but I found it. I don't know how even I found it, but found it quite quickly. I was like, okay, this is cool stuff. And so I just kept on listening, and then now we're here. So
you must have powered through those early episodes, man. The sound quality was shocking. When I go back and listen to them, I'm like, God, I'm glad that was some good quality. That was probably actually some of the best quality content in terms of how educational and in-depth it was. It was a bit less conversational, just me sort of ranting a bit more or drilling into things. Maybe we're going to have to go back and redo some of those topics. But when I listen to it, I'm like, man, this sound quality, I can't even stand to listen to it. It's my show. So I'm glad that enough people like you soldiered through it to make me up my game.
At least I don't remember it that way. Like I remember it being okay. So I mean, it's probably gotten better over the time. So, but I don't remember it being bad sound quality. But
I don't know. When I listen to it, there's like scraping in the background and just hissing, and oh man, it's terrible. But that's all right. Everything improves, right? Including Bitcoin Cash. So speaking of, let's get on to our topics this week. So we've got to start with the price, as always. I've got crypto bear bottom continues. I'm increasingly of the mindset that, yeah, kind of we're past capitulation. Everybody's sold out. Okay, maybe they'll be a bit more down, but you know, the worst is probably over. Famous last words. USD $114.42 for BCH, down a little bit. One BTC buys 168.11 BCH, so also down a bit, and one Ethereum buys 11.41 BCH, down a touch. So BCH kind of struggling a little bit this weekend. How do you find the price and the volatility and the financial aspect? Are you much of a trader or in altcoins? How do you deal with the finances with Bitcoin Cash?
Well, I'm not a trader at all, but I mean, I own few other altcoins. Like on this page, the only one would be Monero. I own some Monero and a few other ones as well, but I'm not a trader at all. But like, I just have a hard time thinking that, I mean, to beat the market, I don't know. I think you'd have to make it your full-time job, something like that. So that's not what I want to do. So,
yeah. Okay. Interesting. I mean, obviously we did a listener survey a couple of weeks ago and had a look at what coins people who listen to the show have, and Monero was up there. Ethereum was the most, and then also Monero and BTC were a couple of the other highest, sort of most represented ones, which are pretty unsurprising to me. It's the ones I would pick, but I think probably at some stage I do need to have a guest on who is big on all that trading and gambling and get them to give a bit of a breakdown, because it's certainly not my area of expertise. I just lost money when I did trading, but I had fun, I guess. It is kind of addictive. It is kind of like a bit of a weird video game, but at the end of the day, you know, yeah, you got it. Beating the market is so difficult if it's not your kind of full-time thing. So glad to hear we're here for peer-to-peer cash. First topic of today is the Binance chain got sort of hacked and shut down. So I have here a tweet from BNB chain. Due to irregular activity, we're temporarily pausing BSC. We apologize. That's the Binance Smart Chain. We apologize for the inconvenience and will provide future updates here. Thank you for your patience and understanding. And then they added, to confirm, we have suspended BSC after having determined a potential exploit. All systems are now contained, and we are immediately investigating the potential vulnerability. We know the community will assist and help freeze any transfers. All funds are safe. So this was on October 6th. So this is a few days ago. This drama went down with BNB having 2 million BNB siphoned out of their bridge between their BNB beacon chain and their Binance Smart Chain bridge. Now, Binance being a relatively centralized chain, they only had 26 active validators out of supposedly 44, but I don't know, that was some stat I read, but I don't know that I'd put a lot of faith in that. And so they basically just shut down the chain with the central control and put in a hard fork to blacklist some of these addresses where the hackers had put their money. Of course, I think at least some of the money the hackers had already got out. They'd already swapped it into another crypto, and this then created a bit of chaos in their ecosystem. But the price didn't actually take that much of a hit. They fell from $295 a coin to only $275, which is, not too bad. It's less than 10%. With getting your whole chain hacked and taking the whole thing offline, and there's now some sort of I don't know, discussion going on in the Binance community as to what to do about these frozen funds. Are they going to just burn those coins? Are they going to use their burn on Binance chain to sort of pay back people who lost money in the hacker funds and all that kind of thing? But it's just brought up here as kind of another case of the classic crypto hack. There's one every 2 weeks, so it's good to see. But it's the theme of the episode is centralized versus decentralized chains. So I'm curious to get your take on all these hacks and scams. How much attention do you pay to all this chaos in the crypto world?
I'd say not so much. I often, whenever I hear about other coins or other projects, I often think like, okay, I imagine like the Bitcoin didn't exist yet, and that that person or that group would come out with that idea and try to post it like on those early forums and stuff like that. And I asked the question like, would it gain traction or not? And I would say even things like proof of stake. I mean, but that's my personal opinion at least. I kind of think like if that's what would be discussed all the way in the beginning on those first forums, I don't even think it would even gain traction to begin with even. So, but just because crypto is such a large industry anyway, and people kind of have like know the idea, kind of that many other things can gain traction, which otherwise just won't make a chance at all. So I kind of think the same thing is valid for centralized chains and stuff like that. So
yeah, I think it's a good point. And I think it's something I also have a similar sort of litmus test, or where I see so much nonsense going on. And I just think to myself, like for proof of stake, I think is a classic example of that, which is if you just think if Bitcoin, when it had launched, had been proof of stake, would it have been exciting? No, not in the slightest. Why? Because everybody would have just said, we've already got a system like that. It's called fiat currency. The people who have the most money get the rewards because they run the banks. Like that's exactly what that was. The whole mining industry was not only a good way to distribute coins and also to solve the double spending problem, but it also created like a bit of a hobby. It meant that people got involved and they were spinning up their computers and geekily like mining away, and there was a kind of there's a cool element to it. Right now everybody's established with the idea of cryptocurrency, but when you said mining cryptocurrency, like there was even a couple of months ago, Hillary Clinton, all these Bitcoiners trying to mine their new coins into existence, good luck to them with that. And it's like it's this sort of mystical property that you could just create money out of your computer, and all of that added so much to it, and proof of work still remains essential that I've been skeptical of the Ethereum proof of stake transition. And I think a lot of these chains, they're just not going to hold up in the long run, because if they were just launched on their own, like you say, it wouldn't go anywhere. But like, what about in comparison then to the smart BCH stuff? Have you followed that in any great detail?
Well, I thought it was a cool idea to begin with, so I slightly looked into it, but because it was still a centralized bridge to begin with, I thought, you know what, I'll just wait until maybe someone else makes it like decentralized, because I thought it was a cool idea to start testing with it, just like, you know, have like other side chains and things like that to test out, but I just hadn't had the time yet to look into it much, so I wasn't much involved with it at the time. So
I guess that's a win then. In hindsight,
it saved me from the drama as well.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I think that's something that it's easy to overvalue or undervalue, I guess, whichever way around it is that actually how resilient Bitcoin Cash or any of the major cryptocurrencies are in terms of how much is actually going on. And like with, for instance, doing a coordinated upgrade that Bitcoin Cash does every year, there's a huge focus on not disrupting too much of the other things that are kind of built around onto it or to users or whatever, because the fact of the matter is there's all these people using crypto that nobody's aware of, or they're just using it, right? It's not like they're not deeply involved in this, that, and the other thing, and they're going to say, oh, I need to upgrade, I need to switch this, I need to do that. No, they just want to show up and have their money still work, and then if there's new features and things, well, they'll check them out when they have time, but it might take them years to get around to that, so you can't screw up their money that they've already got for the sake of that. So I think, I don't know, do you have, if you're an engineer, then does that inform the way that you look at cryptocurrency? At least for me it does, but how do you think that plays out compared to other people that you see without an engineering background looking into crypto?
Well, undoubtedly it has some effect, but I don't know how much. Like, there's also, I mean, some people are just very much interested in a subject, and that's the same thing, you know. Like there are same with any engineering discipline. There are many engineers who maybe didn't go through the traditional schooling, but are better engineers than the ones who did actually go through the schooling, just because they're so fascinated by what they're studying and what they're working on. So, I mean, I think it's all of it. A lot of it has to do with personality as well, or just what your interests are. So,
definitely. The way I was saying, so I'm like a software engineer, but I haven't done any training or any, like, I didn't go to university for software or anything like that. And I think one of the ways that I noticed that it plays into things, and we'll talk about it a bit more in this episode too, is I have a very pragmatic approach to a lot of it. I think it's very hard for me to get excited about coins that I can just see, like, if you added 20 times as much transaction volume, this would just die or it just wouldn't work, or it couldn't get there, you know. And I put a very high premium on things that I can poke around in the tech a bit and see, okay, this has actually got a bit of legs to it, and it's I'm not as easy to like bamboozle. Like, you can see there's even some people who are big crypto people, right? They love crypto, they're very involved, they might even be influential in the scene, but because they don't have that technical background, their arguments are always sort of from this point of, oh, somebody told me that this isn't going to scale, or this isn't going to work, or whatever, and they just kind of go with that. And there hasn't actually been all that much debate that I've seen between like engineers and non-engineers. It tends to be like two non-engineering sort of influences, and they each have like their half idea of how engineering works. But I think if like someone like Vitalik, or I don't know, Gavin Andreessen or somebody was more willing to get into debates against other people who went, like Lynn Alden, for instance, like someone who was an economist or something like that, should probably just get shredded, because there'd be no comebacks when it was like, yeah, but that's not going to work, or this has to be a certain way because of this certain thing. So I don't know, it's just interesting the way that it informs everyone's point of view, I guess.
Problem is, a lot of technical people have a hard time expressing themselves. So
that's right. So, exactly. It's like a people versus objects kind of thing. If you're better with objects, you're probably worse with people. And so in that way, yeah, it's like a problem that every company faces, right? Where they have the engineering department that is just wants to just focus on a problem, and also just wants to solve its problem. And then there's the chaos of all the real customers and business demands and people's relationships and stuff going on at the same time. But to get the gold out of the engineers, you've got to leave them alone. You've got to create a bit of a firewall where they just can work on a hard problem and then come back with the results. But also you've got to keep them on track, because if you let them just wander off, which I guess a decentralized community is more apt to, then they just make something that nobody needs, right? Just something that's cool for an engineer to build, not necessarily to use. So yeah, it really plays into it. Right. So we had this kind of centralized incident with Binance, which I thought was worth highlighting because it was a big story this week, although it didn't really affect me. Oh, I guess probably also worth just saying that it has, I think, briefly impacted the Smart BCH bridge that is running with BlockNG. So yeah, if anybody needs to get their money out of that or whatever, take this as a warning, and when it's up, do it and get your money out.
Before I forget too, and I just read the headline, so this might be a bunch of crap, but I saw in the Telegram chat that there was a bug in Lightning Network stuff too. So BTC had been locked for a certain amount of, like I said, didn't read the article, but funny that it's happening at the same time.
I mean, everybody goes through problems, and I guess that's the nature of this decentralized stuff, right? It just blows up over and over and over as it's anti-fragile, right? Until it becomes more resilient. Like that bug gets patched, a few people lost their money, move on. And that's kind of the irony of the central financial system can point at this stuff and say, oh yeah, crypto is just a sham and like it's always having problems and stuff. But that's the point, it's always having problems. Whereas the banks are not having any problems until suddenly everything is fucked and it's all blowing up. And at that point, there's not really much that can be done to save it. So I actually take it as a bit of a, like, if there's nothing blowing up in crypto, I'm a bit suspicious. It means we're not pushing the envelope far enough or fast enough, I guess. But speaking of that, we've got the Bitcoin SV news that we certainly needed to touch on. So obviously from my point of view, and I would say many other people in the Bitcoin Cash community, obviously there's historical animosity and there's different things bound up in it, but it has been essentially predicted for a very long time that Bitcoin SV was pretty much a scam that was being run by Craig Wright and his billionaire or multimillionaire, whatever, buddy Calvin Ayre, who was financing him. And the idea was some sort of variation of, well, Craig can say that he's Satoshi and then can say, look, this is my 1 million Bitcoins that Satoshi is sort of presumed to have. Nobody actually knows for sure, but the sort of analysis of the blockchain has a pretty good stab at that. And that they could then say, well, give me back my Bitcoins that I, the world's greatest OPSEC expert, lost somehow, some way, and now I need them back because I don't have the keys anymore. And this sort of, it's a bit hard to explain, honestly, how it's all happened, but it's just like, this is the legal attack on Bitcoin, right? So that's been the sort of theory, I'll say, for quite a long time. And well, here we are seeing it sort of play out step by step. So Bitcoin SV, the Bitcoin Association that they call themselves, have now announced a blacklist manager, which is they've made a software tool, which in their words, allowing Bitcoin miners to comply with court orders to freeze lost or stolen coins. Now, this is very important to understand because in crypto, the rule is not your keys, not your coins. I say it on this show all the time. And the whole point is, if you don't have the keys, if you lose them, you give them away, you get hacked. Too bad, so sad. Like the point is the fungibility of the currency and the uncensorability, and just the rule is not your keys, not your coins. That has to be permanent, because if it's not, then what are we doing here, right? If anybody can come along and just grab your coins off you, then you may as well have US dollars sitting in a bank account, right? But this kind of legal angle of Craig's is, well, if I can convince a judge somewhere to say that I am Satoshi, then I can establish a legal precedent that these are my Bitcoins and they should have to give me back my 1 million coins. Of course, it's not really that simple for him, because if he tries to tell the miners and the nodes to give him back the coins, hopefully the vast majority is just going to say fuck off and not do it. And it doesn't matter how many court orders he has, he can't get anywhere. But he's clearly trying to make an example with Bitcoin SV that he does have a bit of control over, in order to establish it as a precedent, and then go to BCH and to BDC and say, look, judge, who probably doesn't know the ins and outs of all this stuff, I've created an example where this other judge said that I was owed these Bitcoins and I changed the software and now I got the coins. Do it for the rest of them, right? So, I mean, I think this is obviously a gigantic scam, and this is very predictable, and we're going to see it kind of play out. What do you think? The whole Craig Wright aspect, or Bitcoin SV in general?
It surprised me that, like, when you hear all this, like, it really surprised me that you'd want to go along with it, even to begin with. Like the whole idea is that you can't easily shut it down or anything like that. So if there's a court order that you can have so much effect on it, I mean, it's so against what it kind of everything, how it started off with. So it just makes no sense to me. So I remember reading some articles once, think like, hey, what if, and like all the way in the beginning, like I read about, well, who's this Craig Wright guy? I was like, but who knows? People are shoving him to the side, and but maybe he is kind of the guy. But then once you start getting into it more, you realize like, oh, it's just a bunch of inconsistency. So I was like, okay, whatever. I'm not gonna spend much time on this anymore. So but I had no idea of all the other court orders going on. Sometimes I hear something about it, but then I try not to get too involved with it. So,
well, you shouldn't need to, and that's the beautiful thing about it. That's kind of the whole point of the proof of, and like we were saying before, about you never know who's using crypto and what they're doing with it and blah blah blah. It all just is on the internet, and the transactions go, and whoever was making those deals was making those deals, right? That's kind of the beauty of it, and that's how it's supposed to work. And so this kind of attack, it is essentially a sort of legal attack by Craig Wright, has been to be going around and suing all these different people. Of course, that hasn't really stopped anything in crypto, because it just 99% of the world, doesn't matter who he sues, nobody else cares. Everybody else just carries on with their life, and he wastes his time and money in court, and unfortunately the time and money of a lot of people who probably had better things to do, while the world sort of carries on. So his plan is basically flawed, because I don't know that there is much legal grounds for any of this. Certainly, no matter how much time and effort he invests into it, he doesn't seem to be getting particularly far. He won, in quotation marks, his case against Peter McCormack recently, we covered it on this show. The judge said at the end, Craig has multiple times submitted false evidence to the court in an attempt to mislead us. So, but I'm finding it defamatory or whatever, and I'm giving him £1 of compensation. And the reason the judge did that was then he couldn't sue again, because he'd already had his one court. Like, I think it had been that if he'd lost, he could have come back for round 2. So the judge said, I'll give you £1. That'll, McCormack will have no trouble covering that, and then you're finished, you're done. And so he's obviously just somehow trying to wrangle his way around to, the court decided I was Satoshi, as if that will help him. That's not gonna. He doesn't have the keys. It's that simple. And so, yeah.
Do you think this was part of the plan all the way from the beginning? Because I remember in the beginning, like before, like after the BTC BCH fork, I mean, he was able to convince a lot of people, and like including myself, like, oh, he's a decent guy, right? In the beginning, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. A lot of things he said made sense, and also like convincing what's his name again, where the Satoshi gave over the project.
Gavin.
So being able to fool or mislead people, I mean, he must be really good at it. on a smaller scale as well. Then I would think so. I sometimes wonder, was this all part of the plan from the beginning, or how does this evolve? Something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly seems to be somewhat of a plan. There's certainly, if you dig into it a bit more, and I personally am no expert in all the ins and outs of it, but there was sort of seemed to be this plan earlier. It's now turned into this whole legal orders to grab the coins kind of scenario. But before that, there was a whole angle with patents, where Craig is always talking about how he has all these different patents. And the idea basically was that he had a bunch of, that's how he got Calvin involved, to my superficial understanding, was he basically went to him and said, look, I'm Satoshi. Whether or not he said to him, I'm Satoshi, like, I believe it, or I'm Satoshi, you know what I'm saying? If we get patents on this Bitcoin stuff, and then we're the only ones who can use it or develop it or license it out or whatever, then if we make a big enough, believable story, then we have a patent, and then we can sell the patents, like patent trolling, basically. And there's a whole bunch of stuff. Anybody who's interested can go and look into it. There's this article called The Satoshi Affair by this journalist who went to like find out what was all going on, and he hung out with Craig for a couple of weeks, and he like was there when the tax office was like trying to grab Craig, and he's like fleeing the airport, and like all this like stuff is going on, right? And it's just like that was the original plan, I think, was going to be, if I'm Satoshi, then I can get a legal copyright over Bitcoin and then sell that and make a ton of money. But that kind of didn't really work out, because it's the same thing. Like the actual proof and evidence that he was Satoshi started to come apart once people dug into the details of it, and then things sort of just spiraled out of control, and so it morphed into, instead he got kicked out of BTC sort of as he wasn't actually a main part of the fork originally, but he got carried along onto the big block side, and then he got kicked out of there too, and so now he's just in his little corner. He's just been sidelined. Like crypto worked, it worked beautifully. Bitcoin just filters people out who it just doesn't want, because there's no central point. There's nobody came and said, Craig, you're out. But the fact is he is out. And
but yet we're still talking about him.
Well, that's it. And I didn't really want to bring it up on this show, partly in that respect, right? I don't bring up every little bit of drama. I mean, he's done a fantastic job of keeping himself in the conversation, but I try not to bring him up too much. This one is just really egregious. This one had to be pointed out because
and undoubtedly people will come across of it, and they'll also ask like, hey, what's this? I had friends of mine asking like, oh wait, Bitcoin Cash, is it the same as BSV, or is it also, what's the difference? I was like, oh, okay, well, so I mean, I think it's good it's on the show once in a while, but it's because it's still so there, so a lot of people who come into it might be convinced that he is Satoshi and stuff like that. So
that's right.
It's worth mentioning it at least. So
that's it. And it's going to stay in the conversation. And I sort of see it. It's that part of that anti-fragile property of Bitcoin, that it's important, like the BTC side, they always try and shut down discussion of BCH, because if they bring it up, then they just start losing the argument. Their whole premise is based on, no, don't look at that. That's not the real Bitcoin. Where I have the opposite approach, I think, for BCH to BSV should be, no, everybody should go look at it. Go do your reading, research it, figure it out. If you like it, if I'm wrong, like, have a merry time. That's the whole point of crypto, and it's actually beautiful in a way that people can be off in their own chains. But BSV have a very well-deserved reputation as probably the most hated crypto that exists, period, because even like the most scammiest ones, BSV is hated more, because not only is it somewhat of a scam for the people who got involved, but they're actively going out, being aggressive, creating all these legal problems for the rest of the industry. That it's like, how you could be in favor of that is just absolutely beyond me. So, I mean, we do have Craig appears, at the start of every episode. He's in the intro with his grand statement that he's going to bankrupt everybody. Of course, that didn't work out, much like a lot of other stuff that he, has claimed. And yeah, it's just important that people remember that. But basically what it comes down to is that on BSV, it is feasible that this blacklisted client, because there's like 20 nodes. I looked it up. I think there's like 20 or less nodes on BSV, all of which are, or a majority of which are probably run by Calvin and his closest buddies. So they can actually say, okay, we're adding blacklisting and add it. And then Satoshi's coins will be not movable. And then they'll add in a rule, which will be like, you know, if you have this other new key, which we've just generated up, then you can spend Satoshi's coins, or maybe they'll melt down those coins, you know, burn those coins and create some new ones. However they do it, it will be some way of moving the coins from Satoshi's rightful coins to the, you know, his new, under their control, right? But the important thing to realize is that that cannot, even though they can reassign the coins like that, they can't do that on BCH or BTC. There's no way to do it unless the network cooperates, because whatever hack they put in, it still doesn't help them find a cryptographically valid signature for Satoshi's coins. So the only way for them to get this in on BCH or BTC would be for the ecosystem at large, the node developers and the nodes to all, and the miners to all cooperate and agree to this. And unlike, you know, instead of having 20 nodes, there's like thousands, and hopefully enough of those people just are not going to bow, like hopefully none of them are going to bow to any kind of pressure, or like, even if you got sued, even if the Craig, I don't know, tracked you down and he gave you court orders for your one node, you could probably just still say, fine, I'm just going to shut off my node then. I'm going to do that in preference to actually running your corrupted like fork. And I don't see how he could compel you to run his crappy version of a node, even if he could shut you down from running yours, and you just let somebody else run it who's in another part. He can't find everyone. So
it sounds very decentralized. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. And that's the ultimate resistance. You know, it's this only, we're going to find out. I don't know about Craig's chances or not of getting the certain court orders that he's obviously angling for. But even if he does somehow wrangle his way with enough time and money into getting them, it's going to be, the proof is going to be, he gets his court order and he shouts to the sky at it, and the network just carries on exactly like it, you know, has always done, really. Jed, do you have any thoughts on any of this?
I'm kind of interested because I think there was also the case against Hodlnaut or whatever the hell. I think that was just recently just recently wrapped up. I don't know what the conclusion was, but it's just another like defamation case. And so I don't really think he's going to get anywhere with any of this. Like, it's just wasting people's time and money. I don't know, like a week ago, I remember, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was like some entrepreneurial thing, and they were like, focus on what you're doing, not the competition, because the competition will always be there anyway. And I think Craig has done the opposite, where it's, he's so focused on what the competition's saying about him and so concerned. I don't know what, I can't tell what's genuine either, right? Because he comes out and he's like, no, my social abrasion and like issues communicating is because of autism. But yet I'm sure Vitalik, if we're tested, would be on the spectrum. And Vitalik's like, no, he's just speaking technobabble. Like, it's all a bunch of shit. So I don't know. I feel like it's more of like, I think he might be a pathological liar. And I don't think that anything will actually come from this, to be quite honest. And then you have, you know, the people from the BSV scene going like, hey, Calvin, listen up, buddy. Listen to the companies that you're investing in, because this tech sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things I notice most about the BSV community. And I mean, obviously I can say, oh, you guys are all just, it's all centered around Craig and Calvin. And they could say, oh, well, BCH is all centered around Roger Ver, or, you know, whatever. Anybody can point fingers as to their favorite chain, how centralized it is, whatever prominent figures. But one of the things I really notice is, yeah, like you were saying about him being a pathological liar, is that I have had, you know, personal experience in my life with somebody who was genuinely that kind of a liar. And I think for people who haven't had that experience, because most people are honest most of the time, right? So people are used to that. And even though people lie as well all the time, But it's like most people, if you've caught them in a lie, once the crosshair is over them, they'll give up the act, right? They'll go, okay, no, you're right, and the truth will kind of come out, right? But there are certain personality types where they would just double down, and it doesn't matter whatever evidence you have, it's never enough for them to just admit, okay, I lied, or this is the real story, or like anything like that, right? They'll just lie and lie and lie, and it'll just be the next thing and the next thing and the next thing until you just figure out a way to disengage or corral them or get them out of your life or whatever you have to do, like, because they just lack that ability to just, I don't know, I guess they just see that there's no sort of consequences. I mean, the consequences are that everybody just cuts them out of their life. They're just spraying toxic shit everywhere. But
the whole thing reminds me of that Jurassic Park meme. I don't even remember the original context, but there's the guy who, like, oh my God, it's been so long since I watched the movie, but there's a guy, I just recognize him as Gabe from Half-Life, and that's not who it is, but there's the actor that looks like him, and he's like, whoever he's sitting with says something, and he's like, no one cares. And then he's like, he shouts it for him, and he's like, see, no one cares. And this is, yeah. I feel like that's Craig and this Satoshi claim. Like, no one. And I think from that, too, you had people going, well, if Satoshi came back, should we listen to him? Like, why should we care? The network's doing great now.
I mean, I think if the real Satoshi came back, and it's an interesting point, right? I saw somebody saying the other day, they were saying something like if the real Satoshi came back, or they wouldn't instantly be sort of regarded, straight away. It wouldn't suddenly be like, oh, I'm Satoshi and I decree this, and everyone would go, well, Satoshi said, like, and I think that's true, but I think it's also easy to undervalue how strongly, if the real Satoshi came back and started posting and it was actually verifiable that this is the real Satoshi, that would be very influential, like not only just from the financial aspect of it, literally having, 1 million coins of each one, but also just I would take it very, very seriously. Just one of my favorite all-time Bitcoin posts or something was that somebody posted I remember in 2014, there was this one post that was #1 on our Bitcoin, and it was somebody said like, oh, Satoshi, can you answer this? Like they had some stupid question or something like that for Satoshi, and everybody just thought it was so funny that they just upvoted it to the top, and then the top comment was somebody who replied just like, this is like going to our Christianity and asking, Jesus a question. And that was just, it did have that religious vibes, right? Like Satoshi just universally respect everything. Satoshi didn't make any mistakes except the block size limit. It was just professional, perfect OPSEC, stayed anonymous, never spent all their coins, walked away from it, did a bang up job with the engineering, changed humanity. Yeah, how much more can you ask for, right? If Satoshi came back, I'd be pretty interested in what he had to say. I gotta say.
Am I misremembering? Like you had mentioned perfect OPSEC, but didn't some of his accounts get hacked?
I think they did years later. I'm not sure certainly some of his like email accounts that have been dead for ages, and there's been various sort of fraud like Satoshi has come back type of claims. I'm not good enough with all that stuff to know whether those were real. Like it might have been not that he fucked up, but the the email host,
especially with email, it's like there's so many
different stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I don't know in that regards, but if Satoshi came back and signed messages from the Genesis block, like but you would. Well, I feel also very confident that I would be able to know with the real Satoshi. The first thing would be signing from the Genesis block, but you can say, well, what if somebody stole their keys or it was something like that? But like, I think you would be able to talk to them. You would like it would be the opposite of Craig, where he just comes up with all this shit about Bitcoin that is just plain wrong, and is like, it's like he would be an expert in Bitcoin. He genuinely would be, and like that. That's pretty hard to fake, actually, at a good level,
Speaking of, I've got my Genesis block coffee mug here. It's even got
Very
the
cool.
the caption, the chancellor on the brink. Yeah, the Times, 03 Jan 2019, chancellor on brink of second bailout for the banks. For banks, oh God.
2009.
Yeah, 03 Jan 2009. I don't know what I said.
Yeah,
I'm
you
a little
said
too caffeinated.
2019.
So
Yeah, 2019. That was a bit recent. But anyway, all right. Well, let's just wrap up this topic. But basically, essentially, it is imperative that everybody in the Bitcoin Cash ecosystem just sees this for a complete scam, a takeover attempt, because undoubtedly getting the BSV will be step one, and step two will be give me the BCH and the BDC. And the response has to be no, fuck off. And everybody just run a node and just do not comply with any of this shit, and it will go away. But if we faltered here, that would be the end of everything. So can't go down that route. That's for sure. All right. Next topic I've got is our science. Reddit has been debating Bitcoin mining. So there was a post which got really high up on Reddit this week, which said Bitcoin mining is just as bad for the environment as drilling for oil. Each coin mined in 2021 caused $11,314 of climate damage, adding to the total global damages that exceeded $12 billion between 2016 and 2021. And it's from this Eureka alert, but I think there was other sources and quotes and so on and so on. But the University of New Mexico researchers find Bitcoin mining is environmentally unsustainable. Now, given the Ethereum merge recently, it seems like crypto and the environment is such a huge topic. My perspective is that's basically this is the last round of FUD that people can come up with, because crime and money laundering and drugs and hackers, it's all been just told to the public that this is what Bitcoin is. But given enough time, people have seen through that. That's horseshit. And now it's just down to the environment is the last great sort of social media attack on it. But the reason to bring this up is that Reddit was actually very positive in Bitcoin's favor, which is unusual because you would expect a lot of people going for that environmental angle. And there's people discussing in the comments and what about Bitcoin and blah, 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 blah. And how does mining work and what's the point of it? And all this stuff in this huge thread. It's very coming into the public consciousness. So it sort of feels to me like the tide is really starting to shift in earnest. Like once you get to that sort of 10% minority of the human population, then it snowballs to everyone else really quickly. Like, right, it's a critical mass thing. And I think we're getting pretty close to that. But that's just my take. What do you think about the environment and Bitcoin, Kilian?
It has a use case. So that's like people won't judge you for heating your house or using your car. I mean, they might a little bit like, oh, you should do it less or stuff like that. But still, everybody still eats. Everyone still heats their home. So, I mean, because we all see the use to it. So if you compare Bitcoin to all the traditional finance, all the people heating up their buildings to keep all the finance, all the cybersecurity, all the people driving to and from their jobs, I think if it would get a decent comparison, probably the Bitcoin mining efficiency wise would be a lot smaller environmental impact if you'd compare it on the right scale. So, but I would like to see some estimates of what the traditional finance sector actually uses in energy, because I think it's I can imagine it being quite a bit of energy and probably a few orders of magnitude larger than even all the electricity that's used with Bitcoin mining. So, but
yeah, I don't know. We might be starting to come up, close on that metric. I think, yeah, it's a valid point. It's one I often discuss with people, but I think, yeah, probably, especially as time goes on, especially if Bitcoin gets even like another order of magnitude or two more valuable, at some point it will be using more energy than the banking system. Of course, it's more useful than that.
At 1 megabyte, the per transaction cost, that would be a lot higher. So if you're comparing BTC, of course,
That's right. That's exactly it. That's why it's critical. Like Bitcoin was designed from the start, actually, there's another element to it that we were talking about before. All those different layers, energy and material science, the mining industry and stuff. Like it's actually drives humanity towards more green energy, where it like can be done anywhere in the world, and it can use a variable amount of power up to any cap, right? So people who are doing hydroelectric and stuff like that, the problem is you end up generating more electricity than you have, and storing it is very inefficient, right? Batteries and so on. So instead, you can just run some Bitcoin miners, and then you have to run your power grid above the demand, because otherwise people get blackouts, right? So it's, Bitcoin mining can fill those holes, and the demand for miners is that they're economically motivated to produce the most efficient energy the most efficient way possible. So it's actually driving research into better alternative energies, and because of the algorithm and the difficulty adjustment, it can just keep going and accelerating humanity towards better production of energy. But once you get into all these nitty gritty, which is kind of what was happening on Reddit, the FUD angle is, but it's useless. Like, why? We don't need this. Like, I don't know why it is. Like you say, if you switch off all the hair dryers in the world, like we don't need them anymore. I think they're useless. Someone would say, yeah, well, but somebody else finds it useful. But if you just say that about Bitcoin, suddenly it's like, that's not allowed.
So I found just from a very quick Google search, I found an article from September 17th of 2021 by Franz Quiles. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. It starts off, I simply do not know why so many people try to discredit Bitcoin or cryptocurrency networks for their energy uses, energy or electrical consumption. There are a lot of criticisms towards Bitcoin because it uses 91 terawatts per year, but I was wondering if anyone put his eye on the cost of the traditional monetary system. If we focus on fiat, the estimated global production costs of paper currency in 2014 were 5 terawatts per year and 100 billion liters of water, while the banking system alone is even consuming more energy than the Bitcoin network. Banking's energy costs are calculated around 100 terawatts per year. So 105 terawatts and 10 billion liters of water.
Versus what? Versus
94
10.
terawatts.
Okay, so they're slightly more as it is. But if the Bitcoin price 10x, the BTC price 10x, we would undoubtedly be using more energy. But on the other hand, like, the argument is more sort of around, but the market already finds the perfect rate, because that's the whole point. Like, the Bitcoin only has a price because people want it and need it, so they buy it. And when they do that, that sets the price, which sets the difficulty. And then miners just mine up to that exact amount and no more, because otherwise it's not profitable. They're better off switching off there. So it is a perfect system where it takes exactly the amount of energy that it needs and no more. But I don't know, with this proof of stake stuff, people just are increasing. Like, that's kind of the whole point. Ethereum kind of bowed to the social pressure, which I think was a terrible move, but they kind of are like, well, now we can say, you don't need all this energy. Look, we've got proof of stake and that works fine. And it's like, yeah, that works fine, provided your environment is your one and only metric. Once you dig into everything else, maybe not so fine. But
also, for the banking costs, it only includes 3 values: server cost, branch costs, and ATM costs. So it doesn't include the banks or its employees, like to and from work. Sorry.
There you go. Just too much bullshit.
You get the point. I will post this in the Twitch chat. So if anyone wants to take another closer look, they can.
Yeah, and we'll put that also in the video description for the listeners who aren't live. Yeah. Anyway, suffice it to say, like, this whole energy thing, it is another topic. It has been a requested topic. I would like to do an episode going deep on it. Actually, I got to credit Peter McCormack has recently done a few good episodes around energy, talking to miners and different things like that. So people can go check out what Bitcoin did if they look up some of those energy episodes, if you're interested in all that stuff. But we will cover that on this show at some point. I just don't know when we'll get around to it. Probably when it's a big fun topic of the month. Okay, so that was all to cover off all the other like chains and drama that is going on in crypto. Let's talk BCH. So this month we've had CashTokens work continuing. Jason Dreisner, I can never remember which way around it is. Dreisner, I think, announces that V 2.2.0 of the Cash token spec has come out. There's 3,500 test vectors, he said, in this one, and they ran a test of the chip, the cash improvement proposal for cash tokens on a test network, and they mined a few thousand transactions, and everything worked brilliantly. They're going to be running another one later this month, and I thought this was really important to point out, firstly because I do think the cash tokens is actually a pretty big upgrade, but I would say the more important part is that it's indicative of how smoothly the ecosystem is functioning. The fact that we have this massive upgrade, which is planned to lock in November and then roll out in May. So when you it's not the case that May, everybody's going to be finishing everything up in a rush and getting it in for May. No, it's going to be all decided 6 months ahead of time. And in fact, not only is it all decided 6 months ahead of time, but it's like we have a working implementation of it ahead of the deadline for the spec to even lock in. And as somebody who works all day in tech teams producing software, getting to things ahead of time with lots of runway, with everybody calm, with it all going smoothly, with all stakeholders happy, that is a massive feat, let alone doing it on a decentralized network. So to me, this is just a huge sign that the network is going in the right direction, and given another year, 2 years, 3 years, things are just going to keep getting better and better, like they have been for the last year. But I don't know, have you heard much about cash tokens? You big on the idea of cash tokens, Kilian?
Yeah, I like the idea. I just haven't I haven't taken the time yet to look into it as much as I wanted to. But I'm definitely, it's on my list, like one of the next things I'll look into. So, but I haven't taken the time at least to look into it much. So, but it sounds like, from what I've read, it sounds super promising. Like, whoa, okay, this minor validated tokens and stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities that it unlocks. So it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been knocking around in the ecosystem for a while, and there was the SLP tokens, which kind of came into it, and there was various proposals for group tokens and things, which then evolved into this. Obviously, you also had smart BCH tokens, which were more sort of Ethereum style. But this one, I think the reason to get so excited about it is that it has been very well thought out and very planned in advance, like we were just talking about. And also, it's unique. I don't think there's no other, because most of the other chains are EVM chains, and the other Bitcoin chains are not doing this kind of thing. This is homegrown in the BCH ecosystem specifically for the whole cash use case type of vibes, and adding scripting power. So I think it could be a real sort of differentiator in the marketplace, and I am personally looking forward to this a lot. I think we got to temper our expectations in the sense that it probably adds a lot more horsepower than the ecosystem will be able to get momentum out of in the short term, because you do have to build the tools for devs to then code the contracts and everything and make all these tokens work, and then you need to turn it into user-friendly products with good UX. So I think there will be a bit of a lag, but it does certainly seem promising that if we can have token ecosystems like all the other coins have, with decentralized exchanges and so on and so forth, Internet of Things embedded in all kinds of stuff. So what exactly comes out of it sort of remains to be seen, but certainly seems powerful. And to me, the biggest story though is not the actual cash tokens itself, it's the surrounding process, because it just shows cooperation and harmony in the community, that if BTC or any other coin wants to copy this, they're going to be doing it from a standing start, whereas when you already have momentum, it's just a lot easier to make new things and keep the momentum going, basically. All right, cool. So then we've also got here Paytaca, who are a Bitcoin Cash company in the Philippines, and they have an open source wallet and also a service called Connector, which is similar to Uber Eats style food delivery. I don't really know the details in any more than that, but basically you can pay in crypto is the idea for food delivery and getting a burger or a pizza or whatever dropped off your Bitcoin pizza, and they have been just crushing it. I didn't actually realize, but I think they're coming up to this big what they call public launch. So they're certainly public. I've known about them for a while. I'm sure they've been mentioned on this show a little bit, and they've been doing incredible work building an open source wallet because the community really needs that. But they obviously got to a bit of a point that they can make it to a sort of grand announcement. So this October the 17th at Robinson's North Mall in Tacloban City, on the launch week, they'll be activating at least 10 pioneering merchants, their own proof of point of sales app, and a Bitcoin Cash powered vending machine. So I'm really looking forward to this live stream to see what they've been working on. But this just seems like the full package going on here. They've already made a wallet. They're going to make a proof of sales stuff. So that's going to compete with the Bitcoin.com register app. They've got the vending machine, which are very high visibility, and people can get the point of that, right? It's not like this is some gambling on some DeFi bullshit. When you can buy things out of a vending machine, people understand that, and people understand that it's like cash because they used to putting cash into a vending machine. Less so these days, I guess, but maybe people who've been around for a while more remember that. So I just really want to give a shout out to the team on this because I know they've been working hard, and this stuff looks amazing. Have you tried the Paytaca wallet, Kilian?
I wanted to download it, but I think it's only Android for the moment. So I remember hearing about it and trying to check it out, but I think it's only Android for now. I haven't had the chance yet. So
yeah, I think that is the case. I mean, they're saying this is their official launch and everything, so I might need to go back and have a fresh look at it. I have used it a couple times in the past. It was pretty good. I did have a couple of small issues, but I think it's critical that the ecosystem has people working on these open source wallets because it's been so maligned or so griped about that the Bitcoin.com wallet is the most user-friendly like go-to wallet, and that's closed source, and they've been adding more and more ads and other coins and stuff like that. And much aside from like CashTokens or getting the momentum rolling on anything else, building a whole wallet ecosystem and integrations and everything, that does not come quick. So you don't want to get in a scenario where people need an alternative and then suddenly you start up a new fix or solution. No, you got to have a few redundant options already ready to go. So in that, the team's doing great work on that. And certainly if they can get a little bit of a local ecosystem going in the Philippines, similar to Townsville in Australia or St. Kitts, that would be absolutely amazing. Would you try one of these vending machines? What do you think about that? Are vending machines kind of going out of style, or do you think crypto can bring them back into vogue?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's awesome. That's a good start to get people interested. I'd say, like, if they want to use it, well, here's some Bitcoin Cash, and you can use it, and it will work very fast, I'm sure. So, I'm also interested the Connecta thing that said like the Uber style food delivery. That would work pretty well too, I think. So, I'm interested just if they can get momentum going, because that sounds like a good use case, at least. I remember in the past you could where I live, you have like takeaway. You could use Bitcoin in the past, but then they stopped accepting BTC because it had such high fees and stuff like that. So I remember using it in the past, but oh well.
Yeah, it's a bit of a disaster. That's just will forever remain a huge regret of the crypto ecosystem, just as if it's not hard enough to convince someone to try a new technology and give it a go and walk them through the steps and blah, 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 blah. Like that's already just like pulling teeth. But then how far back it all got set with, and now we've got to do it a fresh round. No, seriously though, this time for real. And we're not going to pull the rug on you like last time. Yeah, it's it was a disaster. That's putting it mildly. But yeah, hopefully we'll see the demo on the 17th, and I can even see maybe these things can sort of interact. Like maybe if you had the ordering with Bitcoin Cash and you had the ATMs, not the ATMs. Well, maybe they would have ATMs too, but you could then have the vending machines and stuff around, and like maybe you could get food delivered out of your vending machine, but you've just already paid from your phone, or you can pay in advance when you're just coming to pick it up, or you can send some to your friend who is at the vending machine and they've run out of cash or whatever. Like there could be a load of ways. So it seems really cool, and I'm sure they'll be planning to sort of commercialize this and ship it other places. So it would be pretty cool actually if commerce starts up, like between, obviously they're close to Australia, so then maybe they could sell some of them into Townsville, and it could add to the Bitcoin Cash vibe and flavor of the city. That's something I really think is going to be big, is something like this. It's got this big Bitcoin Cash logo on the side and some sort of info and text about it. Like that's attention grabbing, right? People are really going to be like, wow, it's happening when they start seeing this stuff spring up to life in front of them, rather than just on the internet somewhere. I guess it's harder to ignore. All right, cool. So let's chat about Bitrally.cash. So this is a website that you built, and it accepts microtips. So for the listeners, you send in like 50 cents. I've got a photo here, but I couldn't get your cats in the photo. You send in 50 cents of Bitcoin Cash, and it rings a bell like on your desk or like in your study, it kind of looks like. And then your cats can come along and eat the food, right? So it gets their attention. And there's a robot arm, so you can actually like play with the cats. And so you send in the Bitcoin Cash to like get their attention. And obviously it's just a fun thing. It's a cool demo of like, you couldn't do this with fiat currency, right? It just wouldn't work at all. So how did you get inspired about this project? Walk me through the steps of what went on here.
Well, I remember thinking, okay, I want to make something Bitcoin Cash related. So, but then the question like, okay, what can you make that you can just let it run at home and that it can work? So, and all the way in the beginning, actually on this picture, you can even see it. I have a 3D printer there in the back, and you can see this robot there with a paintball gun on it. And the first idea was, what if you'd make like this online interactive game where people can play paintball with real life paintball as well. But
that sounds
when sick. I built the first prototype there, and you can see it on the picture even. But I mean, there's so much more that goes into a project like that, and you need to find enough users. You need to do some matchmaking and stuff like that. So I eventually realized that it was maybe a little bit too ambitious to do that as a side project. So and I thought, well, you know what? I have some cats running around here, and maybe I can just make something that people can play with them. So with the robo arm. So then I decided to go on to that. And then I built the entire robot, also making it so that they can't hurt themselves. So you can run against the arm. So it's back drivable, and the motors will give way, so that they can never end up in a harmful situation for them. So, and originally it was called CryptoCats.cash, but the fact that I was planning on adding these, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. So you see this kind of like this.
Yeah,
and it also has a webcam on top and a Raspberry Pi. So I was wanting to make a whole bunch of these so that you could not only play with the cats, that you can also drive around my house with these in. But there are still a few, race them, or something like you have the Rocket League, where you can play football and stuff like that, but then in real life, but then also like, I don't know, play out some cats, or maybe, I don't know, some other animals. I don't know. I thought it would be cool to have some interaction that way, but I haven't gotten around to adding this one because there's a few more. There's a lot more latency issues with the Raspberry Pi with the live streaming, because the problem is with getting live streaming just right. Like even now on Twitch, this live stream, like in actuality, it's going to be like 7 seconds of delay or something like that. So you need to get this super low latency live streaming, and the Raspberry Pi just barely can't handle software that I'm running on there. So I'll have to upgrade it slightly more to get the little cars running. So that's why I changed the name to Bitrally.cash. For now, it doesn't really make sense because it's crypto cats everywhere. So, but
real quick, the Twitch stream should be 2 to 3 seconds of latency, and I believe I can actually set that down to be half a second. But I do also have like fiber op connection, so a little bit of an advantage here. I'm super curious about this.
I thought it was 7 seconds. No, I thought it was 7 seconds because I believe, well, maybe you can set the delay down that, so, but it might be 7 seconds plus whatever setting you've got, right? Because the reason is that Twitch enforces a minimum delay because that's how they minimize lagging on the stream. If they have at least 7 seconds of like buffered content, then if your internet drops out for 2 seconds, then it comes back and like there's still 7 seconds of like time, right? So as far as I know, I don't think you can go down to literally like live or as close to live as possible.
Let's do a real world test. So I'm gonna unmute my laptop here, and when you clap, so I'll just say like, oh, sorry for whoever heard my Telegram stuff. So I'll tell you to clap, and then I'll sit, like when I hear it, I'll say, okay, I'll count from then to now. Okay, so clap. 4.
Okay, 4 seconds.
No.
Not as good as I was hoping, but
if you would like to do something like that, driving with a car or something, like 4 seconds, I mean, it's just way too much. So one of the largest challenges was getting that latency down to, now it's like it's about 500 milliseconds at the most. So, but, and also I thought it was like a fun use case to show people around, like, okay, what's Bitcoin? What can you use it for? Like a demonstration wise. You can't do this with BTC with the micropayments and everything. Like, and the idea is everything's local. So I can have a blockchain running, like a full node. You can have the video streaming, like the server is, I host it locally, and the server for all the redirecting is also all locally. I host it myself, and the safety was like a huge part, like not only in the robot itself, but also I thought like it would be cool to use an Xpub to generate all the different addresses, and that you can link the different addresses to different session IDs, so that different users can do it. Like even if they get and hack into the server itself, like they don't have access to any of the funds. So maybe in general, like there's not going to be a lot of money on here because it's just as a concept where you can do micropayments, but the idea, you can use it on a larger scale for other applications as well. So I was just trying to make something where you can, in a fun way, show how Bitcoin Cash works and how like what are the advantages, how you can explain it to people. So that's kind of the idea. And I'll be working on it still, but it's aside from my full-time job. So I work in a robotics company, and I mean, it's sometimes I come home and I do have the energy, and other days you don't. So it just takes time. So
like any side project, no, but that's good. That's any engineer should be doing that, should be tinkering away, right? Not only is it fun, but that's how you build up your skills, you push your boundaries. And so how many users actually do you have of this, like in an average month or in an average week? How many people use it, do you know?
Well, I built it like over a year ago already, but I hadn't promoted it anywhere. And then I think somewhere this summer I thought, you know what, I'll just put it on some Telegram channels. And funny enough, like once every few weeks or something, I would hear like, and then like, oh wait, oh yeah, that's right, the robot's still running there. So someone, or I'm laying in my bed and I hear the robot arm moving around. So okay, cool, someone decided to try it out. But it's not that often. I would say a few times a month maybe, but that someone would try it. But I'm surprised that even that happens sometimes. So
That's pretty cool though. It's one of those things where you just realize how big the world is, right? That just somebody somewhere out there in the ether is like, oh, let me just play around with these cats. Let me just give this a go and get some entertainment out of it. That's super cool. And what about the tech stack that you use to build this? What like libraries did you use? Did you use is it in JavaScript or you do it some other way?
Okay, so the backend, everything is done with Python and Flask, and then so there are different layers to this. So and then of course the front end, there's some JavaScript to the coordinates, because like if you control the robot arm, it needs to send your coordinates from your mouse back to the backend side here. So there's some JavaScript for that, and then on the robot itself, it needs a separate microcontroller to do the inverse kinematics, is what they call that, to calculate which angles the motors have to be in for a certain arm position. So then I use a separate microcontroller with C++ on there. But that's in general, that's the tech stack, I would say. But on my Twitter, there's a small graph that goes through the structure of how it's built.
Okay, all right, yeah, hit me up with that. I'll tweet that out afterwards. This sounds super interesting because, like, to me, I'm a software developer, but like I've never played around with any of this, robotics or even Raspberry Pis or circuit boards or anything. Like, I've done a little bit of like soldering, I guess, but a lot of that stuff is beyond me. I tend to exist in the virtual world as far as my projects go. So I think it's super cool when people bring this stuff into the real world, and maybe I should get more into that. It sounds kind of really interesting, actually.
Yeah, for me it was the other way around, because I've been only busy with like in the real life, like the mechanics of things, and like all the programming I've done has always been on like for moving parts and stuff like that. So I thought, oh, let's dabble into the software aspects of things. So I thought that's why I started this project actually also. So
can I harass you with a couple questions?
Yeah, get in there.
Okay, so first thing, have you ever heard Spencer Lambert? Back when like IOZetta was just released, Spencer Lambert did like, I think something called Dash Ducks, and he had like the Bitcoin Cash chickens and goats, and it was all the same kind of idea, and they were just like 24/7 live streams because he was on a farm. And yeah, you would just like send a little tip and it would feed the animals. Did you ever like hear of that or use any of that?
Yeah, I was a huge fan. Like once I saw that, that's actually which inspired me to start out with the paintball robot. I thought, well, let's just make it even more interactive. Like now it's pay and something happens, but I wanted to make it that you could pay and also do something with it. So
okay.
And in hindsight, maybe using cats wasn't the best solution, because they have their own little their own will, and they they'd rather sit outside and play with real mice than with this fake little one. So I think you might have more success with dogs, like shooting a ball or something like that. I don't know.
And was there any reason, like, so when I saw those things, like IOZetta kind of triggered me for some reason, and I was like, okay, I can do this. Like, I totally can do this. So I ended up making, as my very first, I think it was my very first hackathon project that I didn't finish in time for the hackathon. I made a little candy vending machine for my sisters. And it was the same kind of idea. You'd send it 10 cents, and it was just a tiny little servo. I'm not going to dig it out right now, but with like a 3D printed plate. And it was 2 plates. So if the plates lined up, something would be able to fall through. And I just never figured out like that last, I was using just a basic Arduino. It didn't even have like, it just like listened for one address connecting to like an index or something. I can't exactly remember what it was. So was there a reason, like, is there, how do I phrase this? Was using the Raspberry Pi just something to give you a little more like overhead room if you wanted to expand things? Like the Arduino felt very limited on what I could do with it. Also, C++, come on. I don't like that one bit.
Yeah. There's a lot of libraries for the Arduino and stuff like that, so you can easily get the servo going. I mean, it's I don't know. It's also what you're used to, I think. But the Raspberry Pi, the only reason I use the Raspberry Pi, I also don't like for the website itself. It's just running on some old computer I have.
Yeah.
The only Raspberry Pi I've running is on this car, and the reason was because I wanted to do the live streaming with the webcam.
Oh, okay.
So that was actually, it just needs a little bit more power to do the video, because from this Raspberry Pi, you see there's like this USB cable, and it goes up to an Arduino here.
Oh, okay.
And this one will, this also goes to a little servo that I have in the front here that moves the wheels. And then also a little drive here, also from, all done by the Arduino. But the Raspberry Pi just forwards the serial connection to the Wi-Fi, because also the Raspberry Pi has Wi-Fi, to my server on the other side here, where also the robots connected to and stuff like that. But
that's it.
It's the same idea, but yeah.
I feel like I've got more questions, but let me sit on this for a second and think about it. Actually, here's one. What do you if you could just kind of focus on these software hardware integrations, like if you had the time and the opportunity to do that, what do you think would be your goal for a website like this, or maybe something kind of in the same realm but different?
Yeah, I think I would make it more like an interactive gaming world, like where you can, I don't know, go into a separate room, or I don't know, like maybe like a zoo or something, where you can, like it's gaming, but then we had real life games, and now we have virtual games, and I want to make the connection between the two, actually. I think and Bitcoin Cash could enable this some way. I mean, the gaming industry is huge, and micropayments like this, and I don't know. I thought that's kind of my main goal with developing it, and also it's just a bunch of fun, like making stuff that other people anywhere in the world can control. I mean, that kind of gets me going.
So, just as like an addition, with the cameras on the cars or racing around or whatever, what if it was like, if you had a VR headset or AR headset or whatever, like you could see what the car sees, right? And if you turn your head, the car moves and all that. I don't know, man. I love projects like this.
Definitely. Yeah. That's all possible, That's definitely like something like that could be an add-on later on. But I just thought, like, everyone has a computer, like let's just make it not everyone, but a lot of people have the opportunity to somehow get to a website and then just to control it. I don't know. So even like using a VR glass would be even cooler. Like imagine moving your head and that it moves on its own, and then you can move on further. Like that would be awesome.
I'll definitely share this.
Says, yeah, what about if you get two cameras? You had one of the room and one on the front of the car, and then it was like an obstacle course, and you had to, drive around a block and down a ramp, and like something like that, some like Toy Story type of situation.
Yeah, exactly, something like that. That would be cool. So yeah, if people have suggestions, you can send them to me. I'll try to take them into account, or we can brainstorm about it. And yeah, sure. I mean, I'm always open to suggestions. So.
Yeah, I mean, and then you just work the money angle in there for me is always super simple, because then you just make it like a bit of like sort of gambling where, okay, it's like $1, because it seems to me it's like real life arcade games. So like you just make it $1 to play, and then if you get the high score of how fast you complete the course or something like that, then you get a percentage of all the previous people who like paid in, right? So then everybody's trying to rank up as to the fastest time, and there's a little Bitcoin Cash element as well too. I could see that working really nicely.
Yeah, or you could have other people bet on a race or
on how
like
fast.
As well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, pick A or B, red or blue or whatever. Yeah, that would be super cool.
Add some mice in there, like people can let the mice loose or something. I don't know. I mean,
yeah, chaos. Pay 10 cents to dropping chaos into the scene. Yeah. Man, yeah, no, this sounds like this project could take off. But yeah, I mean, it just comes down to the time, I guess. That's like anything, any side project, there's only so many hours in the day, really, where you can you can dedicate to this kind of stuff. But yeah, it is fun, and yeah, people should check it out. Bitrally.cash and give it a try. Play around with the robot, send in some BCH, maybe get the attention of the cats, maybe not. It's a bit hit and miss. I've done it a couple of times. One time the cats came, another time it didn't. So you got to be that's part of the gamble for sure, is whether or not they're busy and they can be bothered to hang out with you. But you got to be in it to win it, as any good gambler will tell you. So check it out. Okay, we got next thing, just some recognition for BCH that I wanted to call out. I just saw in the last 24 hours 2 little things that I thought worth highlighting. One was from I can't read. What's the Twitch handle on this guy? It's at Dean M Little, posted on Twitter last night after running payment broadcasts on BCH, BSV, and Solana for the past few months with zero investment in broadcast tech like API. While not the cheapest, BCH is by far the fastest and most reliable. Make of that what you will. And I don't know who this guy is, but according to his profile, he's a developer for Twitch, which is one of the biggest BSV apps. It's basically Twitter, but you can add tipping and stuff to people. And it was just very unusual that you see somebody coming up roasting BSV and Sol. A bit of a weird combo there, but I guess these are the coins he was interested in developing on, and just saying BCH is by far coming out the best. So I thought that was just worth highlighting, because that kind of thing doesn't come around easy. It's not the praise that you get of, oh, your coin pumped and suddenly everyone's excited, but to be like, wait, this actually works the best, is exactly what you want to be hearing, because that's how you attract engineers into your scene. And sort of at the end of the day, if it works, it works. Whereas if it's just a narrative like, oh, it's going to take over the world, but then a year later nobody cares because it didn't actually work, well, that's only getting you so far as well. So we had that, and then I also heard some guys talking about Bitcoin Cash on this Twitter space. Hopefully Jet can pull that up. Kilian, I'm going to send you the link as well, because we got to listen to it offline. But let me just send you the link here. So it was just these guys talking for about 1 minute in the midst of, they did a whole section on Bitcoin Cash, but I found this perfect little 1 minute summary of their thoughts, which showed to me that, and this is just guys talking about crypto in general, the message is really starting to resonate with people. So take a bit of a listen.
Like a PayPal is through the roof. So, at some point, and even look in Russia, what's going on over there with the war with Ukraine, and what they're doing with cryptocurrency and everything. And think about it, they shut down the banks. What are you going to do? Or, if they basically hold your money hostage in the bank. So, what's the best way? And even my buddy down at the pizzeria there that everyone loves, he sends money back to like Costa Rica and stuff. So, it's like wild, he's like, where else are you going to go and send money, overseas, international, for little to nothing,
Yeah, and
So,
one of the reasons why they created Bitcoin Cash was because Bitcoin, some of the average transactions are up to like $59. You know what I mean? It's kind of like Ethereum with some of these transaction fees. There's actually some gas fees, or they used to be, right? Now they have Lightning Network. They have some side channels, whether it's like Layer 2 or something like that. But when you look at Bitcoin Cash, 24/7, anywhere in the world, instant, less than a penny. Like, isn't that the goal? Isn't that what everyone's trying to accomplish? I mean, it just seems like that's the goal, right? And like I said, it's got the name, it's got everything. It is a store of value. It's got the 21 million max supply, max. So, I mean, it's crazy that people just walk past it and they go on to the next thing, right? And they're like, oh, it's going to be this thing and that thing and that thing. It's like, are you just ignoring this right here, right? This big ass pink elephant right here? You know what I mean? With the big ass pink Bitcoin Cash sign on it right there, saying like, you know what I mean? Like, look at me, look at my numbers, like pull my fact sheet. You know what I mean? That's why it's
No,
weird.
even the ATMs though. There's like a kind of like a convenience store slash, I guess, bodega down by where I work, and one of the places that particular place has a Bitcoin ATM now, and they were some lady got scammed or something that went down
There
there,
you go.
but
That should be about it. Right? 3370. Yeah, good enough. Good enough. That was it. That main segment in there, I just had to play that for the listeners because this is just a few guys. So this is not some huge Twitter space with some big influencer or whatever. There's like 50 or 100 people, tuned in to listen to this, and just that to me that's the start of what's going to be the huge story in 6 months, a year, 2 years, or 5 years. I don't know when it's going to be, but people are getting the idea. Like this is what it's all about. It has to be about payments, fast, simple, reliable. That's what people want. What are we doing with all this gambling and speculation and like stuff that you can actually use? And then talking about, like we were talking about the vending machines, the ATMs, like things that are physical that get in people's face, that they see and connect with that, because crypto is big, but it's still a niche. It's still a small thing that not everybody is using all the time or even that much. And it needs to just jump across that divide to be in people's faces. Wow, this is actually it. We're actually transacting in a digital economy, and I can see those seeds starting to flower. I mean, the whole peer-to-peer cash element has been overlooked for a long time, but it's slowly gonna come good. That's my honest belief. I don't know, Kilian, am I dreaming here? Are the average people, are they gonna wake up to peer-to-peer cash, or what are we waiting on?
I surely hope so. I mean, it's one of those things, like if there are, it's like, what was first, the chicken or the egg? Like the applications or the users,
Yeah, good question. It's I think probably the users, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
I always feel like the chicken must have come first, but that's just my take on biology. It sort of seems like, I don't know. The egg has to be the genetic code of the. Anyway, this is philosophy, deep philosophy starting here on the stream. But yeah, it needs to just get over that. Get like the public awareness is almost at that point, and I think all that needs to happen now is a mind shift away from gambling, which is how people think of it now, gambling and finance and speculation. They've got away from crime and fraud. That, like, there's still some of that, but they've moved past that, and now it's onto speculation, and then with Dogecoin and whatever, and it's just got to get to payments. Once that clicks into place, we're off to the moon, baby.
Yeah, definitely. Once there has to be like a few good apps or things or use cases, like where once they start getting some traction, people really start using it, they'll realize like, whoa, this just works. And this, like, oh wait, it also has the cap, like the guy was saying on the Twitter, like he was also surprised, like how come, like why don't people realize this is a bigger deal? And I honestly had the same question back when I discovered like the difference between BTC and BCH, and from a technical side, and I had a really hard time getting my head around the fact, like how come, why is BTC so much more known? I had a really hard time like understanding why when the two chain split and they kind of went their own way, like how come, why did this one take over the majority of the votes or the recognition? I had a hard time understanding that, and I think it's still the same thing for this guy now too. Like he realized, like, wait, what's going on here? And it's going to take time for people to realize this, I think. So
yeah, it certainly is coming. I mean, it was razor thin, and that's something that is hard to appreciate in hindsight. But BC at the time, when it was a bit like, is this one Bitcoin or is this one Bitcoin? Like Bitcoin Cash, what we now know as Bitcoin Cash, very nearly was just Bitcoin, and BTC was going to be Bitcoin Core or Bitcoin Blockstream or something else. It didn't go down that way, and certainly the social media like propaganda and attack was so effective. I think the largest part of it really was that it started up well in advance. By the time of the split, we're already a year and a half basically into it all, maybe more, maybe nearly 2 years. And at that time, because the community was growing so fast, when you have so many people coming in and they're only hearing, part of the story or in fragments, or they're not really understanding what's going on, and anybody who's trying to explain, like me or anybody else, is getting, banned and censored, then it just manipulates the direction in one certain way. And once they got hold of the core repository and they managed to sort of get the miners to follow along, then that was kind of it. It just had the momentum. And I mean, it's just, real life is just messy, really. At the same time, you have people flooding off into Ethereum and all the other coins to just get out of there because they can see it's all a disaster. And yeah, it's very strange how history plays, to be honest. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have a better answer than the manipulation was effective, and people haven't had a great need to use crypto yet. But when they will, and once they do their research, very few people hate Bitcoin Cash who've done the reading, right? People are very uninformed critics of it usually. All right, so we got meme of the week. Oh no, community comment of the week. I skipped a slide. Community comment of the week comes from Willie Wu, who is he's more on the BTC side, but I think there's a little part of his heart that actually kind of likes Bitcoin Cash. He was in the good video with Kim.com a long time ago, where he was at least hearing out Kim's points and thinking through it. Anyway, he's famous for doing on-chain analysis of BTC and whatever. And somebody said on Twitter, Brian Norgard said, if you don't like Twitter, you should build your own network. And this is obviously one of those troll comments where somebody is criticizing Twitter for their censorship or their algorithm or whatever, and then the classic response is, oh, go build your own. And it's like, yeah, well, that's actually a bit unrealistic a lot of the time, but there's still some merit to it, I would say. Anyway, Willie came back with a really good take, which is just, the irony is most people have already built their own network, adding exponentially more value to their lives than Twitter. They just don't necessarily see it. And I think that's just a good way to reinforce to everybody that online is not real life. And with how manipulated and controlled online discussion can be, I think we're going to see a bit of a return to people more trusting their local communities and people they know, their friends and family, and shifting away from the news headline told me this versus I know 4 people and they think this. I mean, obviously, it's easy to critique, or it's not exactly very scientific. Well, maybe it's not scientific either way, as to have such a small biased sample of people But on the other hand, people are most likely in a similar situation to you, and you also can trust that there's less filters between their opinion and you. It's not there's less agendas and less incentives and less things going on behind the scenes. So I think that's really worth keeping in mind, and maybe ties into the theme of sort of disinformation or centralization versus decentralization. What do you think of this? Are you a heavy Twitter user?
Not really. I mean, in general, like social media, even I decided to take it all off my phone because sometimes you I don't know, you go somewhere, you sit at the bus stop, or I don't know, I'm just saying something, and then you'll just take out the phone, and before you know it, you've been spending so much time on your phone that I decided to just let's just take a break of all this stuff and just see what life brings without all the social media. And sometimes I'll check out Twitter still, but then I'll have to drag out my computer at least and then check it instead of then using the phone, because your phone is there all over the place. So then it's just too easy to grab it and start scrolling away. So, but
yeah, and I actually think it's a little bit of a little micro, maybe even a macro sort of tragedy of our place in life these days, that if you are just in a room with one other person or 2 other people or something just sitting around, they will almost inevitably always be pulling out or scrolling on their phone or something. So it's hard to just cut into that and have a little bit of like if they didn't have their phone, you could be like, oh, how's the weather or whatever, like just something thing and start a conversation with people. You can still do that even if people are looking at their phone, but it just raises the social barrier to then you're really like interrupting them rather than just, oh, we're here together, maybe let's have a chat, let's pass the time, connect with each other. And the thing is, I think a lot of the time the person who is there with their phone, they would actually like to have a conversation too, but they just feel that they have to have that like safety blanket of scrolling mindlessly on their phone. I don't know.
I think many people don't even realize that there's some addiction going on, because I remember the first few weeks, even when I took off my Instagram, I wasn't even a heavy user. If I look at other people in my circle, some people use it a lot, but I was surprised at the fact that it was an automatic reflex even to take out your phone and looking for the app. Was like, oh, wait a minute, yeah, wait, I deleted it. So, and it took a while doing this that you realize, oh wait, oh yeah, that's right, I deleted it. So even me, I did not consider myself addicted at all, but still you realize that there's some automatic, it's just something in there that just draws you into it. So
did you ever use TikTok?
I used it once for about 10 seconds.
Purposely did not.
Oh man. Man, that one screwed me. I've left all social media except for Twitter and Telegram. And that's mostly because I don't know how else I'd connect with a lot of the Bitcoin Cash community.
Right.
Because I'm not giving away a phone number. That's ridiculous. But I remember I was on TikTok for maybe a month total. And at the end of that experience, I was like, I have to delete this because I'm spending 3 or 4 hours a day just oh, that's a nice 7-second clip, onto the next one, giggle a little bit, onto the next one. And it got I remember I would just pace around a room, not recognizing that I'm wasting all this time, and I'd get dizzy and anxious. And I wonder how much more neuroticism, I guess, that people experience when they spend a lot of time online, especially with the quick consumed content, I guess, or quickly consumed content. It seems like a dangerous balancing act.
Yeah, and I think the problem is many people just don't realize it, because I hear people say, yeah, I don't have any time, and life is so busy. And yes, life is busy. We all have a lot of stuff to do. But then you have these reports where you can check how many hours on your phone you've spent on different apps. And I was surprised, okay, whoa, that's about an hour a day. So wait a minute, that's just too much. What can you do with that hour every day for a week or more? And then you have people, like you said, and I think a lot of teenagers, if it's so used to, if you've never known any other, for me, it was wait, something's off here. But if you just grew up in it, where's your reference even? So I don't know. It's very, I don't know. It's strange that we spend so much time on our phone. It's built very well to keep people's attention. So
at the same time, I feel there's so much, I love showing people music that they haven't heard that I think they'd be into, and having my phone on me has been the best and easiest way for me to do that. And even if they don't like it, it's okay, well, it's not this whole system that's set up with a record player and an LP, and we got to put everything back. It's just oh, okay, click, we're done. I think it's just we need to recognize that it's a tool more than entertainment device.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can definitely get on board with that. When I was in Portugal the other week, we were talking about before the show, I met a girl who had a really interesting concept where she'd been obviously traveling around, and as you do, meeting a lot of different people from lots of parts of the world and just in passing and all that. And so people that she liked, there was obviously some barrier, there was some sort of filter. It wasn't just anybody, but people she'd had a good conversation with, she would say to them, hey, can you just add a song to my playlist? And she just had a playlist that was from all the random people, and you could just pick, I don't know, your favorite song or a cool song or a different song. And just by having that variety of people that she met, she ended up with a really varied playlist that would then remind her of those people that she talked to and that travel adventure and stuff that she had. And I thought that was a super cool idea. Obviously not on this podcast, we're going to be saying technology is the end of the world and it's screwing humanity. No, but on the other hand, yeah, it's something we do have to be mindful of, certainly. And yeah, my top tip is to everybody: you can switch out your phone into black and white, monochrome. That's what I have it on, and that massively reduces, because a lot of the way that it draws you in is by color, right? Because if you just turn on your phone, right? I'll do it right here. You back and put my phone up like this, you can already see that it's less interesting than the background behind it, right? Because the background is colorful and my phone is in black and white. Whereas if you have it the other way around, and obviously I also have my brightness like fairly low, but if you have your brightness up high and it's obviously colored, then if you just hold up your phone in front of your face, it will be more interesting to your eye than the stuff that's in the background that's not hyper saturated like that. So that's one way to massively reduce how subconsciously triggered you are to pick up your phone. I also have all my notifications, like I think there's one or two things that I get notifications for. Almost everything else, none of it. And I always have my phone on silent, and like, so sometimes it vibrates for like a phone call, but nothing else. Text messages, nothing. It's just a dead rock until I pick it up. So that's also how I try and reduce how dependent I am on it as a habit, like you were talking about. Yeah.
Those are some good tips. I'm gonna look into some of those. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
You gotta fight back against the phone. It's controlling your mind, man. What do you mean?
It's so useful, and that's why you can't get rid of it, because it's just useful, but we need to find a way to get along with it. It's like technology in itself isn't bad. You can use it for good and bad things, but same with our phones, I guess. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, that's enough about the demise of society. Well, we got one last thing. Meme of the week, solved from Wall Street Silver. They've quoted a tweet from Disclosed TV. It says, "Just in, Belarus President Lukashenko, from October the 6th, all price increases are forbidden. Forbidden from today, not from tomorrow, from today. Therefore, from today, price increases are prohibited." And they've added Wall Street Silver has added the comment, "Dictator solves high inflation in one day. Literally can't fail!" Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. We should all try that. 3 exclamation marks. And I just saw this, and in the context of the Binance stuff and the BSV stuff, and obviously the stuff that is being built on BCH, which is just kind of organically happening. I don't know. It's just such a good reminder that inflation is going to be taking off like a rocket, and it's really getting bad once the central controls start to come in. Like, you can't raise prices. That's not going to stop the prices going up. It's just going to drive the incentives for the black market, and people selling things corner to corner, whatever. Like, that's just a free market flows around price controls. It just always has in history. So yeah, that's what we're going into. That kind of world is price controls come into a store near you in the next 5 to 10 years, probably. I don't know. What do you think?
It reminds me of, like, in the beginning when I started getting into Bitcoin, you also start getting into like what's money and what exists. And I read a book on gold and silver, and he goes through like this exact same thing. Like, it's been happened over and over and over. Like it's funny. Like I thought I enjoyed reading up on gold and silver and the history of money, because it's the same story over and over again. So.
All right, cool. Well, that was the meme of the week. Last slide, as always, message to the community. So just an open platform for whatever you think the listeners need to hear. What direction do we need in Bitcoin Cash from your point of view?
I think the common the common narrative already is pretty good. I mean, peer-to-peer cash, and let's just keep using it, and let's just keep doing what we're doing. I think if we can keep the ball rolling, it's just a matter of time, and people will start noticing it. So.
Well, it certainly seems like they are. That's why I just had to put that clip in. I really like those small little clips of just a couple of guys on a Twitter space somewhere. Just that kind of thing compounds, and it ripples out into society faster than we realize. In hindsight, it will seem fast, but in at the time, maybe it seemed slow. I don't know. Anyway, the revolution continues. So that will pretty much do it for our episode. As always, you can donate to the QR code on the slide. Today, I've got it in the nice Bitcoin Cash green. I was playing around with the new QR code generator. Kind of hard to read. So next week, I think we'll get it back in the black, but it's in in green today. Shout out to the patrons, Ricky and HP. Thank you very much for supporting the show, and thank you to anybody who donates, anybody who listens on podcast as well. Check out www.bitcoincashpodcast.com for all the info on Bitcoin Cash, FAQs, links to the music. If you like the song at the start or at the end of the show, that's up there. What else is there? Resources, recommended stuff, links to all the places you can follow the podcast, like on Twitter and Odyssey and whatever else. And yeah, just thank you for listening. So shout outs. Kilian, who do you want to give a shout out to?
I would say shout out to the Cash Token devs. Some really interesting stuff going on there. So I'm looking forward to see what comes out of that and to dabble with it myself somewhat. So maybe in the upcoming Bitrally.cash as well. So shout out to the devs. Yeah.
Absolutely. And where can people find more of you if they want to give you some feedback about Bitrally.cash? Is there a link on the site, like a contact me type of thing there, or where can people find you?
They can find me on Kilian de Rovere on Twitter, so they can contact me there.
You're gonna need to spell that, man. I'll put a link in the description.
Yeah, sure. You can put a link there. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And Jet, any shout outs this week?
I do, finally. I should have done this last week, but communication got kind of messed up there. My shout out is to Marcelo, who is on, what is it, episode 17?
Yeah, one of the old timers.
Yeah. He has funded my trip to St. Kitts. He's paid for my plane tickets and contributed a bit to my accommodation. So shout out to him. Without that, I wouldn't be there. So I'm excited to see you there. Also, already funded, but he requested I point some attention to it too. So the BCH Argentina team and their successful flip starter, keep an eye on that, and hope it all goes well for him.
Yeah, absolutely. They're crushing it down there in Argentina, and it's only 1 month, I guess, until BCH 22 at St. Kitts. Kilian, are you going to be there for that?
Too bad. I won't be able to make it. So that maybe somewhere in the next one, somewhere in Europe, I might be able to make it. But yeah, it's going to be fun, I'm sure.
Gonna have to rotate around the globe with that for sure to make sure everybody gets a crack at it. That's definitely true. We're gonna have to work on some solid adoption in Europe. So there's a good, like Slovenia, that's or Slovakia, it's Slovenia, right? Has a lot of the Go crypto stuff. Yeah, maybe that would be the place to look. And my shout out goes to Dweller's Art in the chat, who's the first time chatter, and was pointing out that even when we only had old like brick phones with Android and Snake games, people would still check if they'd missed a call or just look at their phone or fake having a phone call or something like that to try and avoid social contact. So maybe I'm over exaggerating. Maybe it's always been the way ever since, probably went back when, I don't know, before that people used their books or something to just ignore each other. Like maybe we are just antisocial creatures at heart. I don't know, but that'll do it. Speaking of, have a good day, everyone. Till next time.
The greatest story the world has ever known. The rise and rise of Bitcoin. 2022.
A single chance for the world, a single moment in time. Bankers captures all, our cryptocurrency flies. Gets to decide, Phoenix fly from the flame. Bitcoin BCH, forever changing the game.
An underdog story everyone trying to deny. Bitcoin revolution, crypto trade on the rise.